Excellency, State Minister of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Federal Republic of Ethiopia, Professor Afewokasu, Your Excellency, Executive Secretary of the Economic Commission for Africa and Under Secretary General, Dr. Vera Songwe, Your Excellency, Chief of Staff of the Africa Union Commission, Ratebayo Todeta, Your Excellency, Ambassador of the Republic of Ghana, Her Excellency Ama Adoma Tum Amoa, Representative of the Swedish Embassy, Miss Emily Renefel, Your Excellency and our dear brother, Wondimu Alemayu, Your Excellency and our dear brother, Ali Todaro, and my dear brother, George Okuth, representing the UN country team. Welcome. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I am honored and privileged today to be with you on a very sad day for Africa, but on a day that we are celebrating a son of Africa, a global icon, and what I can confidently say, the smartest diplomat I have ever known, Mr. Kofi Annan. I am sure all of us have been following the news of the past few days. We lost one of ours on the 18th of August. And for the UN system here in Ethiopia, and indeed the Africa Union and the government of Ethiopia, it's only befitting that we have decided to hold this ceremony in this august place, because it is in this very building and at this very place and in this very country that Kofi Annan's first years in the UN system emerged. You all know that once he finished his first assignment in Geneva, way back in the 60s, he came to Ethiopia and worked for the Economic Commission for Africa. And you will hear a little more of that by a colleague who was his colleague at the time in a few minutes. I would like to thank the Executive Secretary of the Economic Commission for Africa, Dr. Vera Songwe, for bringing us all together today to honor and remember, but for me to celebrate this great leader. As he said himself, and I quote him, "We may have different religions, different languages, different colored skin, but we all belong to one human race." So we are here together today as one human race to bid farewell and to celebrate the life of Kofi Annan. With these few words, allow me, distinguished delegates, to call upon Her Excellency Ms. Vera Songwe, Executive Secretary and Under Secretary General of the ECA, to say a few remarks as we proceed with the proceedings of the day. Madam Songwe.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, colleagues. I think in particular we have Ato Abraham and Ato Alemayo, who are the two colleagues that worked very closely with His Excellency, the former Secretary General of the United Nations, Kofi Annan. Thank you for being here as well. It is with a heavy heart that I stand here today to honor the former Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency Kofi Annan. For us at ECA, and for me in particular, it has been an interesting and very difficult process, because we were in Namibia on Friday and Saturday talking about him and planning to meet him on Monday, because one of the last things that he decided to take on as an important part of his work was road safety. And we had planned a big road safety event in Ghana where he was going to launch an Africa road safety piece of work. And I remember as we were preparing it with the teams, we were like, why does he want to do this in August? Everybody goes on vacation in August. But that's because he had planned to go to South Africa for the Nelson Mandela centenary. Then he was going to do Zimbabwe for the elections to make sure that there was peace. Then he was going to go to Ghana to make sure that we can protect our youth from car accidents. So this was the trajectory. So on Saturday, when we finished the SADC summit, unfortunately, the news came after the SADC summit was closed and everybody had disbanded at about 2 p.m. You know, you could just hear gasps from every part of the room as people were leaving. Oh my God, and then everybody looks at their phones and the news had come across. We called the president of Ghana and asked, what should we do? Should we go ahead or should we stop? And he said, no, we should continue with this piece of work, because this was what he would have wanted and this was something that was particularly important. So for us at ECA, and for the team that had been working on this was very close, because they had been working for the last 3 months very closely with His Excellency Kofi Annan. And I tell this because you would have seen a lot of tributes pouring in from all walks of life, from all kinds of people across the globe. I think, as you rightly said, he was African and we will continue to claim him, and the Ghanaians will claim him. And I have just been told that in Ghana, you belong to all of your extended family afterwards. And so I think we can all claim him, but he really was truly, if ever there was somebody who deserved the name of an international humanist, a peace fighter, there would never be any better than His Excellency Kofi Annan. He was indeed a true international statesperson. He was a noble defender of humanity, and as our UN Secretary General also described him, he was a champion for peace and a guiding force for good. Somebody actually said in one of the tributes that every decade the Lord gives 12 people to the world just to make sure that the world can continue to be peaceful, and that he clearly in this decade was one of those 12 people. And I think that this is a very, very powerful tribute for what he was and who he was. I think for those of us who saw him very recently, there was no sense that the end was impending. I think that everybody who has known him, we were together in Italy just a month ago, where he was talking about, again, Africa, peace, low-income countries, what new agenda for the low-income countries, how can you do that? And with President Ellen Sirleaf Johnson, who herself comes from a low-income country, discussing what is the new development paradigm, what do the SDGs do for low-income countries. So this was the person he was until the last day, always looking for a voice for those who didn't have a voice. He essentially was the voice of the voiceless. He was an inspiration for the youth. In the face of adversity, he was always there. I think we remember him in difficult times in the world, when things were difficult on our continent and without our continent in very many places. When he came on TV, he was the face of calm, he was the face of hope. And I think that that's how we would like to remember him. He was a brother, of course, a husband, a father, a grandfather, an uncle, and a friend. On his passing, his son wrote, "He was as present with each of us and the family as a whole, as he was with every crisis, every mission, and every intervention. No call, email, or text, signs of the times, went unanswered. No personal crisis unaddressed. No major family milestones or celebrations unattended, no matter what was happening in the world." And this, I think, when we were in Ghana on Monday, it's clearly a testament to somebody who was so busy that in Ghana, everything everybody said was about how he came home and that he made time for family. And you could just hear all those tributes about making sure that in the life that he led, which of course was a global life and which tore him apart, he still found the time to go back home, not just to Ghana, but to family, to friends. And I think we will hear that from our colleagues here as well, the distinct value that he placed in friendships and long-time friendships. And on Monday we were talking about that as well in Ghana, about how he continued to find people he had known, and I think you just said that. And I think this is the true value of, he was a human being. He was not just a Secretary General, but he was also a human being who valued friendships. While he spent a great part of his career working on the world stage, he always acknowledged his African identity. In his words, he said, "I feel profoundly African. My roots are deeply African, and the things I was taught as a child are very important to me. Our prayers and thoughts go out to his family. He was, is, and will always be a legacy in his own right. I would like to remember him today in light of a few of his many achievements. During his UN career, which began in 1962 and spanned various agencies and duty posts, including, as we have heard, the ECA here in Addis, and we will hear a little bit more about that. He also went to the WHO in Geneva and the Secretariat in New York. After working over 3 decades in the United Nations, he became the first Secretary General to emerge from within the ranks of the organization. He is credited with revitalizing the United Nations institutions during his tenure. His tenure was hardly without debate or criticism, but he also acknowledged his failures and his limitations. What he will always be remembered for are, of course, the 2001 Nobel Prize, which he was awarded together with the United Nations for their work on better organization and more peace in the world. On peace and security, as I said, he's always continued to promote responsibility to protect, which our current Secretary General is also continuing to protect. He advocated that beyond military intervention, a range of diplomatic actions could be utilized to protect civilian populations in such situations. It is no doubt that even in his passing, he was still doing the peace on the Rohingyas in Myanmar. This was one of the last pieces that he did, again trying to protect civilians. On development, he is credited with significant initiatives, including, of course, something that has been particularly important for the continent, the Millennium Development Goals, which elevated the development issues to the highest political level and challenged countries to translate their development vision into nationally owned plans. He also worked on the Global Compact and the Global Fund for HIV and Health. After serving in the United Nations, he continued to serve the world in his retirement. He worked first as he founded the Kofi Annan Foundation, and then he worked with the elders. Again, the elders were supposed to come and visit, and we have been working on that, so we hope that that will continue. He led the Commission of Eminent Africans to persuade rival factions in Kenya to reconcile after the disputed elections in 2008. Having seen the food crisis in 2008, he also launched the Alliance for the Green Revolution in Africa, which continues today. He served as chair of the Memoriam Prize for Achievement in African Leadership. And because he loved knowledge, he was also the Chancellor of the University of Ghana. And finally, his last discovery or finding was championing road safety. In Ethiopia today, for instance, we have about 170 fatalities for 10,000 vehicles, and I think that the government of Ethiopia is doing a lot of work on that front. And this was an important cause for him because we have about 100,000 kids around the world between the ages of 16 and 19 every day maimed from road accidents, which leads to health issues, inability to work, non-competitiveness. And for him, if we did not solve this problem, it was a huge part of the youth population that we were losing at a very early stage of their lives. So he decided that this was something that if we talked about the youth, we needed to address some of the very scourges that were affecting and afflicting the youth. And this is why he took on, together with the UN Special Representative on Road Safety, Jean Todt, the cause of road safety, working with the ECA. In closing, I want to share one of his quotes that inspires me and reminds me of the responsibility we have in this world. He always said, "To live is to choose, but to choose well. You must know who you are and what you stand for, where you want to go and why you want to go there." I think that if we all try to live these words as he has said, then we will be a better place for the continent in particular. Because we were in Ghana and because we were launching the road safety event on the day that he had picked, we as ECA have decided that we would remember his memory, and we hope together with the whole UN community on this day in Ethiopia with a road safety initiatives. So to remember his memory, every year on this day, we will have a road safety initiative and see whether we can reward countries on the continent that are doing better in improving the plight of road safety on the continent, to just ensure that we can remember what he wanted to do and that we remember him in good light, and particularly as a champion of the youth on the continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Songwe, for reminding us of the journey of this global icon.